All right, we're going to go ahead and get started right now. So, welcome everyone, as I've said before, to our webinar series on mastering employee retention that we've specifically kind of catered it towards small businesses and being able to kind of talk to just what we see on an everyday basis as an HR firm. This is hosted by Innovative Outsourcing. And we have been in business for about 29 years. And, what we're loving to do right now is on the HR side and loving to come alongside small businesses and are able to walk with them in their HR journey, whether you're at 2 employees or whether you're at 300. So we really are looking to help people at all stages. And so we thought one of the questions we get the most of is on retention. And so I wanted to bring in our HR expert, Cindi Filer, and she's going to be kind of talking through that employee retention. Some guidelines before we get started. We are recording just so everyone does know, and we'll be sending that out. I know it's really hard to get to a meeting at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, so we're really appreciative of all of you being here. But with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Cindi, and she can kind of take it from there.
Hey everyone, so glad to have you guys here. And the subject of retention keeps coming up. I speak about a lot of different things because I've been in HR for almost 35 years. And it's amazing how when I give them all the options of what to speak about, everybody is still picking retention. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. It's probably why you all want to be here. You might be having some issues yourself. And if you are, you're not alone. So let's jump in and then we can discuss that. We're going to do half of the information today and then half the information at a later webinar so that you're not seeing the whole story today, but you're seeing a good portion of it. So without further wait, let's just jump in. Okay. So again, why we're doing retention is because it's just so important right now. We're going to talk about that in our next slide. But when we talk about retention, it's always often the same as talking about attraction, right? How do we hire? So sometimes people are like, well, I need to know how we hire and how we retain. And to be honest, me as an HR person, I really kind of think those are both the same thing. So the principles we're going to learn in the next couple of webinars today and the next webinar is going to probably help you with both retention and hire. So why are we doing this now? Interestingly enough, our unemployment rate is 3.7%. Actually, as of yesterday, I think it moved to 3.8, but it's low. And that is very low unemployment if you've been around the game for a long period of time. It's low because we can't find good candidates. Everybody knows that. But everybody is a little surprised that it stayed low because we are in are we in a recession or are we not in a recession? But we're seeing price increases. We're seeing interest rate increases. And generally when that happens, we see the unemployment rate go up very much. But that didn't happen this time. And there's a couple of reasons why. We had some people get out of the game and not stay employed. And then we also have an exodus of baby boomers that's coming up in the next few years. So where that unemployment rate would probably rise because of the rising interest rate change that we have from the Fed, we're seeing that natural ease of hiring, right, and the unemployment rate going up is not going to happen like it has in the past, primarily because we've got this large group of baby boomers that are sitting on the sidelines waiting to retire. So we believe that unemployment rate will rise, but not rise to the level that is too high. What that means to you as an employer is that it's going to continue to be important for you to retain your staff because that is the cheapest way to hire is to not have to hire and to make sure that you can hire great employees. And we'll talk about both of those today. So I don't see that trend going down where, oh my gosh, we have so many applicants, it's going to be so easy. I don't see that happening based on what we're seeing in the tea leaves. Of course, everything can change, but that's what nobody's really predicting that right now. And then 47% of the U.S. employees, due to a Gallup survey just 2 months ago, say they are watching or actively seeking a new job. Okay, that is high. Before the pandemic, that number was about 13%. Now it's at 47%. So that's basically 1 in 2 employees around the United States are actively seeking a new job or just waiting and wondering if one will show up in their inbox. So we need to be very cautious. Maybe those aren't your employees. Maybe those are your competitors' employees and your employees are just staying put, which is awesome. But again, this is a factor we need to talk about. That's why we're still talking about retention. And then just some interesting statistics. And this is, again, based on that Gallup survey just a couple of months ago. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in our second webinar, but I just thought I'd bring it up now. A large mass of employees from all levels were evaluated and were surveyed. And they asked them several questions. And these are several of the questions. Who is thriving, who is quiet quitting, and who is loud quitting? And thriving means they're basically engaged. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the second webinar, but they're so loving their job. They feel like they're in the sweet spot. They're the right place. They don't want to leave. If they got another job offer, they probably wouldn't even entertain it. 31% of those are thriving in the US right now. 52% are what they call quiet quitting. And you may have heard that term lately. And that's basically, I'm going to stay in my job and I'm going to do my job, but I'm not really thriving, but I'm not going to quit right now. But I'm going to give them the minimum amount required, the minimum effort. And so those 52% are quiet quitting, which is a lot. And then 17% are loud quitting. And that means they're totally disengaged. They're totally out of the game. They want to get out. They don't like their employer for various reasons. But if you add those bottom two together, the basically quiet quitting and the loud quitting together, that's 69% of our US employees are pretty much unengaged and looking for a new job. That is a very high number. And we hope that that's not the case in your company, but we're going to make sure that it isn't. So let's go to some additional stats. So the majority of workers who quit a job in 21 and 22, again, right after the pandemic, we called that the Great Resignation. The majority of them say that there were a couple of reasons why they did that. The largest was low pay. And we're going to talk about salary. It's going to be one of the first ones we talk about. So interestingly enough, when somebody left a job in 21 or 22 and went to a new company, not a job within the same company, but went to a new company, the average pay that they increased to take that jump was 12%. Now, if somebody got an advancement in their own company, say a promotion, the average promotion was only 6%. And if they didn't change jobs at all, the average rate of change of pay was 3%. So now you know why people are leaving, right? Because they can jump 12% as on average in their job if they jump companies, not just jobs within the same company. So it makes sense why that's happening, but we need to stem that tide if we want to keep people in our company. Second is no opportunities for advancement. And we're going to talk about that because I believe that especially with our clients that we talk to, there are opportunities for advancement, but the employees just haven't been told yet. And if they're not being told, they don't know that it exists. And 63% of employees that quit in these 2 years quit because they didn't think there was a place they could go. And so we're going to have that discussion. And then this one is so interesting to me. Feeling disrespected at work. 57% of people left their jobs because they felt disrespected at work. And we're going to determine in the next webinar that the manager is the number one reason people stay or leave their jobs. It is the key. Now, some of the things we talk about today are very important as well. They're the foundation, but the manager is the key. And feeling disrespected at work, that is something that we should not let happen, right? That's free. We're going to talk about next time, we're going to talk about how many free things that you can do to not have your employees feel disrespected. So let's start at the very beginning. We're going to review some of these areas that you should address. So number one, competitive salary. Now, this one's easy to say because it's easy for me as a recruiter. So just so that you know, Innovative Outsourcing does a couple of different things. Number one, we're a recruiter. We've been a recruiter for 29 years. We recruit part-time and full-time jobs. And we have a view of recruiting where we really partner with our employers and we find out a lot about them. So one of the things we do when somebody signs up with us for us to recruit a job is we create what we call a recruitment marketing profile. And that sounds big, but it basically is, why would somebody want to come work for you when they could go work for somebody else? What's your competitive advantage? It's easy to say when we talk about our clients, but we need to think about that as for our employees and for our future employees. So what is that competitive advantage? That's what we put in a recruitment marketing profile. Because when my recruiters call you and put that recruitment marketing profile together, oftentimes we ask the question of, why would somebody want to come work for you? And they don't know the answer. right? They'll say, oh, we have a lot of integrity, or we're a fun staff. Well, those are not things we can sell because everybody says that. So we're actually trying to find the things that differentiate you, right? And so a lot of times people will say, oh, I can't pay big salaries, I can't ever get employees. But we call all these levers in that recruitment marketing profile. So if you think about a series of levers, and in order to get great candidates and to keep your employees, you need to make sure that you have some of those levers really high, right? Not all of them. And we're going to talk about a lot of them today, but some of those levers have to be fairly high in order for somebody to say, I'm in this job, I'm kind of fine, but this other company wants to hire me. They have more levers raised than my company. And that's basically what we're learning today, how to raise those levers and which levers your company can raise based on the constraints it has. So this number one lever is competitive salary. So salary is, as you can tell from why people quit, it is the most important lever right now, because we need to make sure that you are not paying under market pay. You need to be paying market pay, and then how much you pay over market depends on the position. So there are two types of positions. One type of position is the position that is not highly available. That's kind of, they could be right now, it could be controllers, really hard to find controllers, or accountants in Atlanta, very hard to find those. And so we need to make sure that we know that those are low availability jobs, and they need to be paid higher, well higher than market pay in order to get good candidates. But then maybe an executive assistant, those are positions that we have a few more candidates for. They're regular availability jobs. And so you can pay closer to market pay for those. You don't have to pay way above market pay for those because they're just more out there in the world, or especially in your neighborhood. So we need to make sure that we know what availability jobs are, and then price accordingly. So, but it is important to pay correctly, because even if you have this great environment, we're going to talk about, even though you have great managers, if your pay is significantly below market, then nobody's going to want to work there. So one, you have to know what that is. I used to say back in the day, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that they could do salary studies once every 2 to 3 years for your employees, and nothing much would have changed, but you needed to, look at it every 2 to 3 years. Believe it or not, salaries are changing within the 2 to 3 months now, and going up or down significantly. So we need to make sure that we stay apprised with that. When you work with a recruiter like us, we actually do that for you. We help you price those jobs, and we know what they should be priced. But if you don't work with a recruiter and don't work with somebody for the people in your own company that are staying, you need to make sure that to retain people, you are in the right market pay. So a lot of people ask me, well, with the recession coming and what's happened in job salaries, they've kind of gone like this, right? Really, really fast up. And we haven't seen that in a very long time. But in the last 2 years, it feels like we're giving our employees a raise every 15 minutes, right? And so a lot of people have asked me, is that going to come down? Are we going to go this way and wages are going to go down? And we do not believe that's going to happen. We do not believe that there will be negative wage growth. We do feel like that rate of change being really high right now, that rate of change will go back to normal. So yes, there will still be increases, but it will be more normal. And you will feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not doubling everybody's pay. But if you're waiting to hire that next new person when the salaries go down, that probably will not be happening, and you should probably go ahead and do that. So again, salary is an important lever. It's not the only one, but make sure that it is good. In fact, we have one client that this is a good lever for them. They have higher salaries than pretty much anybody ever has. And so they don't really have to have the other things, right? Because if you pay more than everybody, that's a pretty impressive lever. But most of us as small business owners really can't do that. Okay. Health benefits, 401k, and PTO. So these are really important. Let's talk about employee benefits first. So about 70% of employees need employee benefits. 30% probably are second wage earners, or they may be under 26 and still on their parents' policies. But that 70% need benefits. And so if you are recruiting for a job and you're small, and I totally understand being small and not being able to do benefits, you still can hire people. We just need to be very careful where we look, because we need to find those second wage earners that are not going to want to be in a company with benefits and leave you for that, right? But also we need to make sure that we can keep our employees. So if there's any way to do employee benefits, I know those prices are increasing right now. There are lots of different options on that. But again, benefits are pretty important. So you need to make sure you're competitive there. We can help you with that, or we can also forward you to some of our best benefit specialists that could help you with that. 401k. So 401k, we feel like it's important for anybody that makes over $70,000. Of course, it's important for everybody, but for the person that says, hey, I'm going to stay here or I'm going to go there because of the 401k, it's such a standard option right now that it is really not a lever. It's only a lever if you don't have it and you have the most of your population that make over $70,000. Under $70,000 in salaries, they're really putting bread on the table and they really need the pay. So they're not really thinking about the 401k as much as they are about the salaries. So, and then the next one, this is my favorite one, PTO. It's not my favorite because I love to take PTO, but I do. But it's my favorite because if you're a small business owner, and we work mostly with small businesses, we work mostly with employees under 400 employees. And so for those employers, we're sometimes not able to really compete at the salary level with a Google or, Amazon or somebody like that. But we can sometimes compete at the PTO level where we not only offer a significant amount of PTO, but we encourage people to take it. So that second part is really, really important. I was just speaking with a company the other day in their leadership team. And when I said, and making sure they take it, everybody nervously looked around the room and said, oh, we don't do that around here. And I said, you know what that does? It puts a stigma. Well, you can have 4 weeks of vacation, but if you take it, you're not looked upon really well as an employee. And that is such a bad look. So make sure that you're giving adequate PTO. I like to say that in a small business, let's say you have somebody who is a manager level employee. Well, that employee, if they take 4 weeks of vacation or 2 weeks of vacation, the studies have shown that they basically do the same amount of work for the whole year. So while you may say with the jobs that are minimum wage jobs where you have to have an extra server, extra somebody to answer the phone on time, those kind of things, I understand why more PTO costs money, opportunity costs, because you have to get somebody else to do that job. But for most of our professional services employees, the studies have shown that they get as much done with 3 extra weeks of PTO because they work so much before and after that PTO, right? They get their job done. So to offer that, you're going to have a bigger line out the door to want to work for you, and you're going to get a higher quality employee. We like to say that we want you to get A players. You can get an A player if you do all of these things or do many of these things or pull a lot of levers. You can get a C player if you don't do any of them, but the C players don't work as well as the A players. So you need to think on your strategy on that, right? You don't have to pay as much. They don't need as much PTO because they're just happy to have a job, but they probably aren't as good as the A players. I'm sure they're not as good as the A players. And you've got to decide, are we going to be a company full of A players, or we can be okay with C, D players and then just not offer some of these things and kind of take what's left. So you can kind of tell where my bias is on that. But I really do feel sometimes when you get an A player, they actually work 1.5 times harder than and have better outcomes and productivity than a C or a D player. Okay, so PTO, it's the magic. It's the thing that you can do that pretty much companies don't know to do. One of our clients came to us and they, had 1 week of vacation for their employees in the first week, and then 2 weeks in the first year, and then 2 weeks in the second year. And we really are recommending to those kind of people to go to 3 or 4 weeks of vacation, especially professional services companies, but any company that can do that, because we do see that when we recruit, we recruit for all different kinds of companies, from manufacturing to professional services to distribution companies, all in between. And what we find is that there is a very big correlation between better PTO numbers and larger numbers of qualified applicants. So again, it's a lever for a lot of people, especially our younger generations. The older generations, they were okay without it. They were okay with working a year before they got any PTO. Our younger generations are not okay with that. So if you especially want to attract those younger people to your office, you need to make sure that a PTO strategy has good PTO. I'm going to throw in there just for the fun of it, because everybody asked me the question about unlimited PTO. Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? What's my thought on that? Well, unlimited PTO is probably not my first choice. And let me explain why. I believe that it is a tough understanding for the employee, because sometimes you have two extremes of employees. Okay, one extreme of the employee is the employee that really, really wants to do such a good job, and they are high ethics, which is awesome, but they're so high of ethics, they don't even know, because they don't know where that line is. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? And so they end up not taking enough vacation. And that's really difficult, because they really need to take vacation, right? And so instead of taking them, well, it's unlimited, but we think it's about 3 weeks, right? They don't really take the 3 weeks. Sometimes they'll be taking a week because they don't want to look poor, and they don't really know where the line is. They don't know where that guardrail is. On the other end, that other side kind of person, those are the people that might really take advantage of it. And we had one gentleman that we talked to, and he actually got fired from his job because he took too much PTO in an unlimited PTO environment. And he was so confused. And they were like, "Bud, you can't take 7 weeks of vacation in your first year of employment." And he said, "It says unlimited, and I got my job done." And so again, we're putting so much work on the managers to decide what is good and bad in unlimited PTO, that it's just best, in my opinion, and I know everybody has, HR people all have their own opinions, but to just assign PTO. Right. And if you want to keep people, and if you want to retain people, upping that PTO for longer service is really, really important. And you can't wait 5 years to do it. It used to be like, we have 2 weeks in the first year, and then after 5 years, you had 3 weeks, and after 15 years, you had 4 weeks. Okay, people don't stay people that long in many cases. So you need to up that vacation earlier, make that schedule higher. So you're going to do, say you're going to do that. We're going to hopefully start at 3 weeks of vacation. And after 2 or 3 years, go to that 4 weeks of vacation. And then after maybe 6 years, go to that 5 weeks of vacation, so that they get to the higher level of vacation sooner. And you're going to see people retaining at your company through that PTO policy. So, very important for you to really focus on that. Okay, career path. So remember that 63% said that they were leaving their jobs in 21 and 22 because they saw no career path. So the deal about career path is that people feel like they want to stay somewhere where they feel that somebody likes them and somebody sees something in them that they want to encourage, a leader, and that they feel like there is a path ahead of them, right? And so sometimes in our small businesses, we don't ever talk about that. It's kind of the unwritten thing that we keep quiet about, because we're concerned that we don't really have a career path. So if we hire an accountant, we may only have one accountant. We don't have like accountant 1, accountant 2, accountant 3. We have one HR person. We don't have 3 levels of HR. So what are they going to do? Right. And so we sometimes don't talk to them about options for them. And they just assume that in 2 years, they got to find a new company because there's nothing for them to grow to or do. And along with career path, in the back of their mind is that salary discussion, because career path is important, because I want to do new things and that kind of thing. But also with a promotion, with a career path comes a salary change, right? So it's really important for us to figure out what that looks like. And we need to make sure that we know. So our leadership teams need to have decisions on, okay, what are our jobs that we have, our unique job descriptions? What are those that we want to keep people for 10 or 15 years or 20 years, right? What are those jobs? And then what are the jobs that we understand that, based on the fact we really don't have a career path for somebody, that we believe that success in that job would be keeping them 3 years, right? But we're going to train them in such a way that we can send them off to the next company, the next job, with great skills and make them highly successful. And that's our goal. And we tell them that, right? So we're either going to tell them, we want you to stay in this company for a long period of time. And we're not only going to give you additional responsibility, but we're also going to give you additional pay to make that worthwhile. And on the other hand, if we know that it's probably not going to be a long-term fit for somebody in their age and what they do, we're going to say, hey, we understand that you probably will only be here 2 or 3 years, but during that 2 or 3 years, we're so excited about developing you in such a way and increasing your pay and stuff in such a way that you're going to want to stay that 2 or 3 years. And then we're going to help you find that next job. So again, that's how you become an employer where people want to work and people want to stay, is when you are about the career of them and their peers. We have one gentleman that we know that was a younger gentleman and came to me and really was trying to decide whether or not he should stay at this company. He liked the company, he liked the leaders, but he didn't think there was really a plan for him. He didn't think that there was a place that he could go in the future, and didn't know, he hadn't heard any words about like, oh, well, you'll get this job next year and then this job the year after that. And so, he talked to us and said, I think I might want to start looking for new jobs in a new company because I don't see a good career path here. And then one day, several weeks later, we communicate with this young man again. And he said, hey, call that off. That's off the table now. And we said, well, why? And he said, because our thought was, you got a new big job, you got a new salary, everything's great. He said, actually, no, that didn't happen. But my boss and the CEO of the company took me out to lunch. And this is what they told me. They told me that I'm the kind of person that they want here, that my skill set is absolutely required, and that my personality and the way that I handle myself is exactly what they want to promote here. And that there are 2 paths that I can go down, one, the individual contributor path, and one, the manager kind of path, the leader of people path. And that these are the raises and things that would come with each path. It was a little bit bigger company, but only about 100 employees. So not that big of a company. And I said, oh, well, that's so awesome. Did they promise you one of those jobs? No. Did they promise you one of those salaries? No. But they believed in him, right? And so he was willing to stay and say that, oh my gosh, I could see myself staying here for a long period of time, based on a communication from a leader and a CEO that said, you are worthwhile. You are somebody that we want to invest in and take time with. And so we want you to know that we want to invest in you, right? And so it wasn't the money right then. It was the knowledge that somebody's caring for what his career path is. So you got to be careful with that. And it's great that you have career pathing for your employees, but you sure need to tell them. And we as small business owners, I think a lot of times forget that. We just assume that they take a job and they may want to stay in it for the rest of time. So again, make sure that you're communicating that career path to people that you probably do have. Okay. Flexible hours and flexible work location. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to do this at the beginning. We are going to do questions, like a Q&A at the end. And I would love to answer any questions on the material that you have. So you can put your questions in the chat if you would like, and then we'll answer those. So we'll have a chance for several questions. So anyway, make sure you do that as we go. Okay, so flexible hours and flexible work location. It's funny, I was talking about this well before the pandemic because I was seeing it come down the pike, but boy, did it move fast. Flexible hours. Now that's just, can I work 7:30 to 4:30 instead of 8 to 5? Can I work 7:30 to 2, go home and then get my kid from school and work 3 to 5? Those kind of things. So flexible hours are important. It's still working 40 hours a week, probably more than that, because the average in the United States right now works 46 hours a week. That's the average job right now. And so make sure that those people have some flexible hours. Our clients that don't offer flexible hours, that's a real turnoff, especially for high-level candidates. When somebody says, well, I'd really like to leave at 4:30 instead of 5, and the client pushes back and says no, that is a real turnoff and a real marker to employees that it's an inflexible employer and they don't want to work there. So I know that I was talking to an employer yesterday and he's like, I can't get on board with all this flexible work and the flexible work location and hybrid and everything else. And it was so interesting, but I feel like it's coming. It's here to stay. It came and it's here to stay. And we need to figure out how it can work in our company. I don't know that we're going to be 100% remote. We're having all those companies call people back in, but I also don't think we're going back to where we were pre-pandemic as well. I think too much happened and I don't think we're going back. So if you can do flexible hours, that's awesome. Flexible work location. This is, do I go hybrid? Do I not go hybrid? Do I trust my employees? Do I make sure that they're there and I can see them, touch them, feel them, and I know they're working? Well, my stance on this comes from some data. So I have a feeling about it, but having a feeling as an HR person is kind of useless. It's more making sure that you look at the data associated with. So there's been a lot of studies done prior to the pandemic and since the pandemic. And the study that I followed most closely showed that if people got to work, and these are professional people, these are not line employees, they're not, they're not working in manufacturing and, where they actually have to be there. But for people that can do their job description away from the office, if people got 1 to 2 days a week working from home, that they would have 12% more productivity at the end of that week, which is pretty unbelievable. That if you polled a lot of CEOs, they would say that if they thought that people got to work home 1 to 2 days a week, they would have 12% less productivity. But that's not what the data shows. That's just what people feel, right? And the reason for that is because a lot of times people are not commuting, so that if they put the same amount of time on that day towards work, they're going to actually work more because they're not driving. Also, they're probably not going to put meetings on that day as much. So that's heads down work time, which is harder to be productive when you're in an office full of lots of people than when you're alone at home, right? And so that 12% is really important. So I love that. On the other hand, there's been studies showing about remote work. So if you're 100% remote, 5 days a week remote, your engagement scores, which we're going to talk about next week, go down 40%, meaning 40% less of your people are engaged. And it's also really hard to retain people because all the other esoterics of keeping people, like culture and those kind of things, if they're remote, it is very difficult to maintain culture in a remote climate. Not impossible, but it is very difficult. And so if somebody's sitting behind their screen and they're working as an engineer for a company, and another company comes and offers them 20% more money, they're just going to go to that company because they didn't have any relationships with the original company anyway. So that fully remote, I think, is difficult. So if I were just starting out, I would definitely think maybe 3 to 4 days a week in the office, 1 to 2 days a week remote. And that is after somebody, starts with the company for 60 days, proves that they know what they're doing, doesn't need the mentorship anymore. And it's a good practice. If you are not doing that, I will tell you that you could lose employees and you probably won't get some of the candidates that you might want. In many cases, we have tried to recruit for jobs that's 100% on site and maybe not gotten the candidates for a particular position that we've wanted. And when we've worn down the client saying, oh, please just make 1 day a week hybrid. It's going to make such difference. We will then post that new job with everything the same, from pay to location and everything else, but 1 day a week remote, and the resumes flood in, right? And so you can look at that one of two ways as a CEO. You can look at it as, yeah, those are all the slackers that don't want to come to work, which I've talked to those CEOs. Or you can look at that as, gosh, these are employees that got a taste of remote and like to have that heads down day, and like to not commute, right? But they're still going to give me 110% of their effort just at a different location. So you can look at it both ways. And I think it's best to look at it we're going to trust but verify way. Like, I trust my employees. I spent all this time and money hiring them. We have put so much effort into them. I'm not going to have that first thought be, well, if they don't work on a Friday, I'm assuming they're playing video games at home. If they don't work on site on Friday, I'm assuming they're playing video games. Instead, we're assuming they're doing their great work. They're just doing it in their pajama bottoms, right? And that's going to keep them and probably retain them at your company. So if you don't have a hybrid approach, and when you work with a recruiter like us, we're going to ask you, what do you think about a hybrid approach? And it's not that you have to, but it is something that you might want to consider. And then I'll throw in such an interesting topic, this 4-day work week topic. There is some information in Europe that came out, and they did a study about, should we have 4-day work week? And this is not 4 10s. These are 4 8s, meaning the 40-hour work week would be 32 hours. And they do it for stress and those kind of things. So if people are experiencing mental health burnout, those kind of things, the governments in the UK decided we're going to try and figure out if ours is killing our population with mental health issues. So they had 3,000 people work in a study. And what came out of it, interestingly enough, and you can go read all about it if you want to Google it. It's the 4-day work week study. And what happened is that most people got over 14% more productivity than they had when they were working a 5-day work week, because they were so excited to be able to get off that last day, whether it was Friday or Monday, that they worked extra hard the other 4 days. Their stress levels went up a little bit during the study, just for a period of time. But they believe that those are going to come down when they know that they don't have to work 14% more. They were just expected to work on par. So again, I have a couple of clients where I spoke in North Carolina to some Vistage groups recently, and 2 of the CEOs in that group were actually looking at this as a policy because they wanted to keep their best employees and they wanted to get new employees. And great employees will get the same amount of work done in 32 hours as they would in 40, right? So again, not saying it's for everybody. It's a lever. All these are levers. You get to choose. You don't have to do them all. Like I said, if you pay double the salary of any other employer out there, you don't have to really worry about the work location, the flexible work location. But if you don't, these are some levers that you can look at. And you really should look up that 4-day work week. That study is fantastically interesting. And I really do think that it is something that's coming. And just an interesting note aside, does anybody know why we have a 5-day work week? So the company, and I'm going to get the date wrong, I think it was 1913 maybe, or 1930, can't remember, but Ford announced that they were going to go from everybody really worked 6 12-hour days. And that was what everybody worked in the country before this date. And Ford decided that that was just too much and people shouldn't do that. And so they said, we're moving to 5 8-hour days. And that was Ford that made that first decision. And everybody made fun of them and said, that is never going to happen. We can't get as much done in the work day and the work week as that. And that's never going to work. And now look where we are. That's the standard 5 8-hour days. So, you may look at that, and I have lots of clients saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe people don't want to work more than 32 hours. But I am guessing, if I could look in my crystal ball, that in the next 10 years, we're going to see more and more of this, because some of us know that if you have AA players, they get way more done in 32 hours than the D players get done in 40. So anyway, look at all of those. Okay, some other unique benefits to help small businesses. I mean, these are random, but we're always looking for those things. Remember, we write that recruitment marketing profile. We always look for those things that are kind of different, right? What can we tell your story? What do you do? On-site childcare would be great if you could do that. Gym memberships. I always amazed. That costs about $100 a month to refund somebody for their gym membership. And it's such a perk. It's so interesting to me that young people are like, oh, I want to stay with that company because I have a gym. They pay for my gym membership. Well, it's $100 a month. And if you put $100 more on their salary, they wouldn't even see that, right? So again, some of these perks, what it shows to them is they care about me as a person. They care about my health, right? Even if you just using it as a benefit and that's not why you did it. I mean, that's kind of what they feel. Free snacks and drinks. I had one client. So one of the things, I told you we did 2 sides of our business. So one side of our business is that recruiting side where we recruit part and full-time employees for small businesses in finance, HR, admin, and then we do some marketing and some legal work. The other side of our business is HR consulting, where we actually outsource HR for our clients, and we do various other HR projects for them. One is called an HR audit, which we go and look at 14 points of their HR, but one is called a culture audit. And so I did this with one of my clients recently. And so I went into this business that is mostly high IT population, very high wealth, and high salary level people that are very much in demand. So very low availability positions. And I did 1-to-1s with 15 of their staff members to see what's the culture here, what's going on, what's good, what's bad, what needs to change, why do you stay? And this one company that had these IT people, every one of them said they stay because of the free drinks and the snacks. Like they have these, and they bring in lunches and they do these incredible snacks and drinks, and it just means a lot. And I thought, oh my gosh, these people have $150,000 to $200,000 salaries, and they're staying at a company because of the snacks. And they said they had craft beer on Friday afternoon. So there you go. There's an option. Yoga on Fridays. I have one of my clients who is a law firm, and they offer yoga with this really cool instructor once a week. So those are options. Free legal service, or free the other thing that's really important right now is financial counseling, how to do a budget and how to get a loan and those kind of things, especially if you have a lot of young people working for you. Free nutritional counseling. Everybody's into health right now. So are we going to bring somebody in to do mind, body kind of wellness programs? Those are really, really important. So might want to look at those, because again, those are levers. You don't have to do all of them, but can you do one of them? Can you have something that people go, oh my gosh, that's so different than other employers, right? Again, creating that marketing profile. And then a leadership development or a mentoring program. That sounds big, and it sounds like, wow, that's going to take me a staff member to put that on, and there's no way we can put something like that in. This is a pretty easy program to put in. You can do as easy things as doing a book study where you give out, say, Raving Fans, which is a cool book, or Ideal Team Player, which is another one of my favorite books, to your employees. And then the CEO goes through it over a couple of lunches. I mean, that's leadership development, right? We have them do webinars where they're very inexpensive or free webinars where they find out how to know themselves, to lead themselves, what it's like to be on the other side of them, what is their EQ, right? Their emotional quotient, what is that? Those are great tools. And to say we have a leadership development program, it's great for recruiting, but it's really great for retention. Mentoring programs are also great. So they keep they're very sticky because they keep your old employees engaged, and your younger employees, it keeps them wanting to learn. So if you don't know, the younger people, they're really looking for this learning, mentoring, leadership development. They're hungry for it. We didn't even know to ask for it, but if you say that you offer, say, 5% of their time or 10% of their time is going to be in development in their first year, you will have a line out the door, because not everybody's doing that. Again, doesn't take you to have a full-time person on staff called the Leadership Development Guru. We can help you with some of those things. So anyway, make sure that you think about that as a lever. And then our last one we're going to talk about today is a great-looking work environment. Okay, this sounds really petty, and it doesn't sound like we want to spend money on that. But I did have one client who came to me and they said, Cindi, we really want to revamp our workplace in the next 10 years. And I was like, okay, tell me what you want to do. And they said, the average age of the person that works for us is 54 years old. Not that we don't love 54-year-olds, but they're all going to retire at the same time. And so we really want to change that and have the average down at about 45 years of age. And so, that doesn't mean that they didn't like older employees. Actually, they liked them so much, that's all they hired. So we were trying to figure out, how do you do that? So we went through a whole strategy. But one of the pieces of the strategy that I told them about was, I looked around their offices, and they were in offices that were they had the mahogany walls, and they had the Waverly. Anybody remember Waverly prints? The fabric prints. It looked very 1990s-ish, that kind of vibe. And for younger employees, that's really not working these days. They want the clean white offices. It doesn't need to be expensive. I mean, it can be IKEA furniture, right? But they want the clean, non-cluttered white offices with lots of windows, lots of white space. I have one of our people that we work with, it's actually a referrer for us, and they have the coolest office because they're a bunch of lawyers, but they have these garage doors that come up, and then they have a patio out there, and they can work out there with their laptops. And, what a great environment, rather than working in a building that's kind of stuffy and, you have the mahogany. So again, different strokes for different folks, right? Everything is going to be based on what somebody's preference is, but we are seeing that those younger people have a preference towards those kind of things. So make sure that you have great technology, make sure that you do some open floor plan, because extroverts like that, and some offices, introverts like that. Because remember, they're going to be more hours than they actually work at home in the days that they work there. Okay, so that's it for today. We're going to talk about our next webinar. So next webinar is actually the most important one. It's the most important lever. It's the manager and their impact on employee engagement. We're going to go through some stats that came through the Gallup organization about what employee engagement is. And you will be surprised at how much the bottom line can be improved at your company if you just focus on employee engagement. And believe it or not, the things we talked about today cost some money. The things we're going to talk about next webinar, they don't cost any money. They cost retraining and training well your managers and your leaders. So we're going to talk about that. And then what's the payout of doing all this? I like to say, what's the ROI? Because, everybody thinks, a lot of people think HR is just exhausting. And why do we have to do it? And man, we just didn't have employees. But it's so important to get the strategy right, because what's the payout of this? An employee that stays. And we remember, if we have a great employee that stays, that's so much better than having to hire. We want to retain a candidate that says yes. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that the next webinar, but we really need our candidates to say yes, the good ones. And then that creates a workforce full of A players. And as I've talked about a lot today, you really want to stack your workforce with A players instead of C players. You will have a lot less issues on the back end, and you will have a lot more productivity on the front end. So thanks again for being here. We really appreciate it. Let's talk about our questions that we have. So Matt's going to come on board, and he is going to share with us a couple of questions.
Yeah. All right. So we got a few of those questions. And so I'll start with the first one. Are any of the levers more important than others in retention or hiring? Because we know we talked about a lot of them, but, what are the ones that, we really, really like?
Yeah, I think that probably right now, salary is the most important, and hybrid is the most important. And so it's interesting. I hate to pick any of them. They're kind of like my kids. Like, I love all of them. But I really think if you don't get salary right now, you are in trouble. And that doesn't mean you have to have the highest salary. Like I said, it just means it needs to be higher than market rate. And if you don't get that right, we're in trouble. That other thing, that hybrid thing, man, somebody calls me and they could be hybrid and they choose not to be. That is really taking their candidate pool down to a very small number of people who are willing to do that.
Okay. And then we got Jimmy Cooper just asked, are there any specific strategies for sales staff in specific? So why don't you speak on that?
Yeah, so we have seen an interesting change since the pandemic on compensation for sales professionals. We have a comp person that works with us, and so we're able to comp out a lot of these jobs, and it's difficult on salespeople because they're so commission based, but we're seeing higher bases and less commission. It used to be more like high commission and lower bases, and it's kind of going like this. And so you've got to be really careful now, because people are not really willing, especially for small businesses, to jump to a small business and do those really low salaries, hoping for the good commission. And I think it's because they see the recession coming around the bend, and they don't feel like they have the opportunity to make a decision on that, on whether or not somebody's going to buy something, because it may not be fully in their control, rather. So the higher base pay is really, really important for them right now. But all of these things are really important. And I will say that I hate to plug the next webinar, but anyway, in the next webinar where we talk about the managers, that's going to be the most important for the salespeople, because that encouragement, that coming alongside them, that how you relate to them, how you speak to them, how you make sure that they are one of you, is going to be very important. And as you probably know, a great salesperson is hard to keep, because they are very much in demand. They are very low availability. Not a salesperson, but a great salesperson.
Yeah, that's great. All right. And then we got a next question from Vasu. I'm sorry if I didn't say your name right. But we have, thank you for the wonderful information on the salary lever. What are your thoughts on the challenge of being market rate when articles like UPS pays employees $170,000 are on everyone's mind?
Yeah. Remember, market rate is going to be against people that are your size. You're going to have to keep up and understand what UPS is doing, right? But you're not going to probably be able to compete there. you're going to have to compete on the other things. You're going to have more PTO. You're going to have more of a hybrid policy. You're going to have managers that are so phenomenal that people really want to work there. You know, UPS does some layoffs every once in a while. If you haven't done a layoff in your entire career, or let's say you've been in business 50 years and you've never done a layoff, this would be a good time to tell everybody, because we're seeing more and more big companies doing layoffs and people want security. So again, you're going to need to compete on the other things, right? And sometimes you won't be able to. We had a client that lost a lot of people to Google because they could almost double the pay of their jobs. And all of those people, and that was in 2021. And a lot of those people have actually left and come back to work for the company because it was such a bad environment. So not all of Google is a bad environment, but they just had that experience. So again, we can create a great experience. We can do those other levers we talked about. Make sure you look at PTO and those kind of things, and make sure that your managers are fully trained and they're awesome. But again, it's tough to compete on that.
Okay, that's perfect. And then, all right, we got a good one. We talk about this one all the time with our staff and our team. So Corey asks, what are your thoughts on advertising base salary versus the total comp number in a job description?
Oh, wow. So one, we have a lot of our employees that are like, our employers that are like, well, don't put anything down. Just put the job description without the salary. Well, we know that about 40 to 60% of candidates don't respond to jobs that don't have a salary in the job. So that's bad. And then we also I want to talk about salary range. So let's say we called you and you would say, okay, it's going to be, this salary range for this position is $80,000 to $100,000 a year. And you really want to pay 80, right? So we put $80,000 to $100,000. Well, almost everybody that applies for that job thinks that they should get the $100,000. So when you offer that job at 80 to all the candidates we sent you or that you found by yourself, and you give 80, they're going to be totally depressed, saying they probably won't take the job. So make sure that those ranges that you post are actually small and that you will pay those, right? You can't say 80 to 100 unless if somebody has all the qualifications and they're awesome, you're going to pay them the 100. So again, we like to see ranges of about $5,000, not $20,000. And then the other thing is, if total comp is a lot different than regular comp, you need to list it, right? So if it's only an extra $2,000 on a $90,000 salary, I think it gets confusing, and if it's very, very variable year to year, okay, let's not put that in the job posting. But if generally, we just had this, we had a position that was $115,000 and generally they got a $25,000 bonus a year. And that was pretty standard. I mean, if we just put $115,000, those employees who were looking for 140 total comp would not have applied. So you do need to post all of that unless it's not measurable. Perfect.
And then everyone keep writing your questions. We'll probably take 1 to 2 more. But the one that we did get was, how important is a fun culture? I think we kind of you talked about this a little bit, of the culture is a huge part of wanting people to be there, but can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah. I think that people, when you hear culture, for some reason, CEOs are thinking, oh, they want like beanbag chairs and ping pong tables. And that is not culture. Culture, I guess it could contribute to culture, but culture really is how you treat your employees, right? How the CEO treats their top level leaders, how the leaders treat their employees. It's, what does it feel like there? What is going well? Why do people like to be here? Why is that employee engagement high? And it's because the leaders have decided to invest in their employees. That's what creates culture, not so much the fun, right? I would say if you have a little bit of time to create a great environment at your company, I would do less ping pong tournaments and I would do more training of your leaders to teach them how to speak into their employees and give them life-giving encouragement and direction, right? So because people feed off of that, they want high support and high challenge more so than they want ping pong tournaments, right? So, I mean, it's important to also have a fun culture where we bring in lunches every once in a while, and that's good too. But that's not as important as having great leaders.
That's great. Well, I think that's all the questions. We don't have any more, and we're going to let you out 4 minutes early. But thanks everyone for being here. This is our first webinar in a while, probably since 2020, and even using a new platform in Zoom. And so we really appreciate it that everyone was here. Everyone will get a recording of this, and so I'll be sending that out. And even people in your organization that you think probably should have heard this, or you know someone that could, you can always shoot their email to us, and we can send it as well, and we'd be happy to do that. So thanks so much. Thank you to Cindi for all the information, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. We'll make sure to set a date and invite everyone that registered for this one on, what did we say it was? It's employee engagement. So and kind of mastering employee retention in that way as well. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.